Hi there, it's Elaine Hamilton Grundy from the Reiki Center, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about resilience. I think resilience is a very important quality for us to have right now, given the amount of changes that are happening and the speed at which these changes are happening. So first of all, I want to define what I mean by resilience. In the Merriam-Webster, they talk about resilience with people and then resilience in physics. It's kind of the same thing. So I quite like the definition that they have for physics. So essentially, resilience is the ability of an elastic material to absorb energy, such as when you hit something or compress something, and then when it releases, it bounces back into its original shape. And in people, we often say that people are resilient when they can recover quickly from difficulty and challenge. But this idea that essentially we have an original shape, and that original shape can be kind of moved and bent and compressed, and it will retain its original shape, is the definition that I kind of want to work with today, because I think it's a really powerful kind of image to put in your mind. Like, what part of yourself, this is the investigation, what part of yourself is actually the original shape? Now, if you look at yourself as a collection of thoughts and beliefs and external environmental pointers, like your role or your job or your status, how much money you've got in the bank, these kind of markers that are kind of constantly changing and moving, then your resilience will not be able to stand any change in that, because it's not necessarily original. If you are looking for some kind of stability in anything that is an external entity, and something like COVID happens, you're kind of screwed. I mean, essentially, what's happening now is the collapse of our ability to predict. And actually, it's always been like that. We don't have that ability to predict. We like to think we do. And in general, the world will respond with evidence to suggest that we can actually do that. However, the reality is that at any minute of the day, we could walk out onto the street, or we could even have a bus plow into our living room, or we could have like an explosion in the gas pipes. I mean, these kind of events are very rare, not suggesting that you kind of hunker down, but the reality of life is it is not predictable, and change is the one constant. Now, we live with this, and then we live with the kind of denial of, yeah, but in general, it's like this. And we move into these kind of very rigid ways of thinking and very rigid ways of defining ourselves. And those ways are things like, well, this is what I do for my job, and this is my role as a parent or a spouse or a partner or whatever, a daughter, a son, and I have this achievement that I'm going for, and this is the car I drive, and this is the handbag I have, and these are our ways of marking. This is I'm doing okay. This is my success. I'm getting somewhere. And then something like lockdown happens, or something like COVID happens, and suddenly we're thrown into the situation where we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in a month or in a year. And all of our structures that we used to define ourselves around suddenly collapse. In the time of COVID, when you're not allowed to go outside, it doesn't matter what car you drive. It doesn't matter how big your house is. It doesn't, no one's going to see all this stuff. It doesn't matter what kind of shoes you have, because no one's looking anymore. And these kinds of quite abrupt, very abrupt shifts that happen externally start to give you an indication of how resilient you are. And what I mean by that is how close you are to your original shape. Now, your original shape is your true essence. It's the part of you that was born into this world, that part of you that has been staring out of your eyes ever since you can remember. It is unchanging, it is eternal, and it is that part of you that is perfectly fine. It has not changed its shape one bit. And this is really powerful in order for you to come into that original shape. If you take the time now to really investigate, right? Maybe you have lost your job. Maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you've lost a lot of your life as you know it. Maybe actually the opposite has happened. You're super busy, you've got homeschooling, you've got bosses that are still demanding you do the same amount of work, you've got like complete chaos going on. You may also be in isolation. You may be the only one at home. You may have nothing to do. Perhaps you've lost your job and you're just sitting at home twiddling your thumbs. So in any of these situations, huge external change has happened. And I think for all of us, there has been some major shift or other. And for some of us, we're dealing with more than others. And for some of us, we're kind of, if you're already remote working or you're already online with a lot of what you're doing, you're actually not noticing that much difference. But the way the world is going to unfold and the way the world is developing now is going to be very different. It's not business as usual anymore. And maybe in a few months it goes back to that, maybe not. And so it's this ability to now come into your own internal steadiness. Your original shape hasn't changed. And that is the kind of the cornerstone, the foundation of your resilience. Like if you can get in connection with that, and obviously I talk about Reiki, so I talk about using our Reiki practice to do that. But if you're doing meditation, if you're doing any kind of introspection, and if you've never done it before in your life, then now's the time to start. Now is the time to investigate what is it within myself that is eternal, never changing, has been there since I can remember, has been staring out of my eyes since I was 2, 3, 4, whenever your first memories of yourself started. That same essence, you have not changed one bit. Sometimes I call it your you-ness. It's like that part of you that is always essentially there. That part, that original, is completely unscathed by all of this. And why do I bang on about that? Because, one, when you can see that you are essentially unchanged, there's a lot of challenges. And I'm not for 1 minute denying that there's lots of challenges and there's lots of difficulty and there's lots of things to think about. However, when you can come into that original shape, that's the resilience, because every time a challenge comes, it's like, ooh, you compress and then you come back, and then you compress and then you come back. And this can happen many, many times a day. It doesn't matter, because resilience is this constant ability to come back into the original shape, right? So as things start to hit you, you will notice when you are in it. Now, if you have not connected deeply with your inner essence, then every single thing, every single challenge, every single change, everything that happens in the external world is going to whack you out of shape. And you're going to be on the floor, and you're just going to be panicking, and you're going to be not knowing what to do, because you've literally just kind of been sidewiped. But that's not necessary because all of us have an original shape. But for many of us, we don't investigate it. So this is really an invitation for you to start to investigate what is it in me that is eternal and unchanging. And then from this perspective, from this seat, you will start to notice that you spring back very quickly. Now, that's not to say you have the answers to everything, but there's a springiness, there's an elasticity, there's a flexibility with what's happening. From this stance, you can then start to get more deeply engaged with the external, like what's really serving you and what's really not serving you. That could be external as belief structures. Even though they're internal to you, they're still external to the original shape. So you might have belief structures that, oh, in order to be successful, I need to be doing this job, and then suddenly you lose it. Now, without that inner flexibility, you're going to be suffering for a long time and really in a panic state of how to hang on to it. But when you have an inner resilience that is already there, when things start to wobble in one corner, there is an expansiveness that starts to happen in your system that helps you to be more creative, helps you to come up with different ideas. There's a flexibility of thinking that occurs. And this is really where we all need to get to as quickly as possible, because this is what's going to help us to shift through this particular phase that we're in as humanity and move forwards into a better future. Now, I don't want to start preaching about, oh, now's the opportunity and blah, 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 but it kind of is, right? We're really at such a opportunity-driven moment. There's going to be a lot of crashing that happens, and there's going to be a lot of building. And it's the resilient people that are going to be doing the building, because the crashing people are not going to have the capacity to do it. So building your inner resilience, building your inner flexibility, building your inner strength is really critical for you to move forward with abundance and with expansion and with joy. Because when you're crashing, it's not fun. And when you're in panic and when you're challenged and you're not resilient and you've been punched and you can't recover, this is not a nice space to be in. And it's just to let you know, it's optional. Every single one of us has resilience. Every single one of us has an original shape. And how you find that original shape is through introspection, is through meditation, is through modalities like Reiki. I mean, Reiki just lends itself so well to this kind of challenge. And it's really taking the time and effort to find out for yourself, what aspect of me, who am I? You know, who is this Eunice? Is it really my car, my bank account, my job, my shoes? Is it really this? Or is there something much deeper and much more eternal and much more steady? All of us have this. We all have an inner core, and it's inside. It's not out there somewhere. It's inside of us. And that inside of us power or force, what I call life force, is constantly okay. Always okay. And it's finding that, because there's the mind part of us, for most of us, for many of us, has just completely disconnected. And the simplest way to start to intuit this, if you don't have Reiki, if you have Reiki, the simplest way, please do your self-treatment. Do your self-treatment. If you don't have Reiki and you're listening to this, get on a Reiki course. But if you're like, nah, Reiki's not for me, I don't want to do that. Meditation, breathing, the simplest thing. Watch your breath. Start to come inside. And just watch the rhythm of the breath. And just watch how, when you really come inwards, just a couple of breaths or a guided meditation. I mean, there's so much stuff on YouTube, really. So much really good stuff. And there's so many meditation teachers doing stuff online now, and there's just so much resource out there for you to stop for 15 minutes a day. That's it. 15 minutes a day. Come into that internal silence. Now, when I say internal silence, I don't mean you have to shut your mind up, because trust me, forget it. It's not necessary either. It's really not necessary. What's necessary, you might well have the blah, 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 blah going on in your mind. But we're very good at multitasking. So there is also that ability for us to come in. You might be listening to a meditation. You might be watching your breath. And as you're watching your breath, as you inhale, you're just observing. Maybe the mind's like, oh, this is so stupid, and I don't want to do this, and I don't have time to do this, and my boss needs the report, blah, 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 blah. But as you come in with that going on, just leave it, forget it, it's fine. Have another part of you watching how the belly expands, how the chest expands, how everything just comes out. And then on the exhale, how everything just comes in, so natural, so peaceful, so steady. And just the act of watching this opens up the potential for you to start connecting in. Now, I don't want to, it's difficult to kind of really talk in depth about this, but it's to start taking a look. Start taking a look at what is my original shape. That's the key to resilience. The key to resilience is knowing that you are unscathed through all of this. There is a part of you that is unscathed, and it may not feel like that. If you're very disconnected from that inner sense of self, it's not going to feel like that at all. It's going to feel awful. But there are many of us who are connected. Many of you watching this video know exactly what I'm talking about as well. And let's keep growing that. So if you're new to this whole concept, take heart and start looking. And if you're already connected, but you're maybe kind of partly connected, it's very easy for you to swing into like a lack of resilience or a lack of flexibility. Then again, take heart, but start to build it more deeply into your system and start looking at ways of deepening. And then, of course, for those of you who are already very deeply connected with it, reach out to people and help them find theirs. Because essentially this is a community effort here. For the first time in my lifetime anyway, this really is a community effort, and it's, in a sense, it's amazing, and in another sense, it's shocking. So it's like we really need to walk this together, and I hope that's been really helpful. Resources that I have is our weekly Reiki gathering, obviously my online workshops as well, if you're curious about having Reiki in your life, and the meditations and things on this YouTube channel. I'm trying to build more meditations in as well. I will do a breath one soon and talk more about this idea of resilience as well. So I hope for now that has been a helpful introduction and perhaps a different way of looking for resilience in your life. And we're going to move on and talk about flexibility next, which is very closely related to resilience. It's kind of one and the same thing, but it's a subset of resilience. So thank you so much for watching, and take care.